with the cinematic universes being created right now, primarily the DCU and MCU, there's been this tendency to go cross-platform or cross-medium, and it's a really bad decision that Hollywood just keeps making and not learning their lesson on. This also applies to Star Wars, and for whatever godforsaken reason in the video game world, Halo. I don't know why they don't understand that TV and movies do not have the same audiences. And really the only way to make this work is to navigate a perfectly balanced tightrope. So I want to talk about why this is a massive mistake and the times that it's actually been done correctly. The biggest reason it's a mistake is because outside of the hardcore fans, you're going to lose people going from movies to television. I'll use the DCU's first couple entries of Superman and Peacemaker as a quick example. You can see Superman's box office, break it into domestic and international. Your average movie ticket cost domestic is about $16. Divide Superman's box office by the domestic average ticket cost. You're looking at about 22 million people went and saw Superman. Do the same for international, which has a pretty wide range. I just assume $14 because that seems fair. Same thing, divide the international box office, about 18.5 million people. So let's just say 40 million people saw Superman in the theaters. Even if you want to deduct 10% for people who see it more than once, we'll call it 36 million. And the next entry, which is season 2 of Peacemaker, not even getting into all the weird continuing some stuff from the previous universe bullshit. Samba TV had last season ending with about 600,000 viewers. They said it was up 22% to start this season. So let's just call it 800,000. And Samba's not super reliable. You usually combine it with Nielsen to at least get trends. Even if we say it's a few million people watch the whole show, you've now cut out 90% of your audience just from viewership. And what this does is just completely handcuff you as a writer, because now you've put yourself in a position where you either have to make everything matter and only the hardcore people can actually follow the story between movies and television, or all your streaming shit has to be inconsequential, so it doesn't really matter to the broader universe. And this is something that the MCU has been struggling with pretty much post-pandemic. They tried to crank out all these shows and kind of force everyone to move over to Disney Plus, which obviously did not work. It's bad enough that even Kevin Feige said it felt like homework to watch everything with the MCU just to keep up with the newest movie or show. And while obviously the quality of these shows and movies has not done the MCU any favors, they've also put themselves in a corner where they have all these random exposition lines because they know that no one is able to keep up with everything they're cranking out at this point, especially because they've gone cross-platform. Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni have made Star Wars possibly the biggest offender of this, where not only do they cross movies and TV and streaming, they also cross live action and animation. So now you've got 3-4 totally different groups. If you count the Clone Wars, different eras to some degree. You end up with a show that pretty much no one is watching, like Andor, actually respecting the canon of a show that no one watched, like Rebels, despite the fact that I actually liked Rebels, and Andor was probably the most competent thing Star Wars has done in a decade. And if you conceptualize this like a Venn diagram, you've essentially got different circles overlapping in a very small place in the middle. And the more circles you add, the smaller that overlap is. So you just end up shrinking your own audience by changing style, by changing medium, by changing format, by bringing in things from 15, 20 years ago at this point. And that doesn't even get into the fact that the circles are shrinking anyway because the audience is depleting from fatigue, from poor quality. If you want to blame the economy, so people aren't going to the movies as much, and the culture, there's a lot working against you. So to go cross-platform is just insane on top of all of that. One of the weirdest offenders of this is Halo, because under Bungie, Halo used the cross-medium concept, I thought, in a really brilliant way. And under 343, they've just completely fucked it up. When Halo 4 came out, the juxtaposition from Halo 3 was pretty much impossible to follow if you just played Halo 3 and then Halo 4, because they wanted you to read the Forerunner saga, which was Halo Cryptum, Primordium and Silentium. And not only did they want you to read those books were hard to read on their own. I've reread the trilogy probably 3 times, and every time I like Cryptum. And then by the time I get to the end of the 3rd book, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm reading. I just give up because I just reread things over and over that make no sense and are super hard to follow. And you can tell this bleeds right into Halo 4's story, where you have no clue what's happening. And the thing that makes Halo so weird is I also want to use it as the example of crossing mediums done right. And to some degree, the Star Wars EU was part of this as well, but the EU was massive with the amount of content that it had. So from my understanding, there's a lot more contradictions and issues, and there wasn't ever just one clear vision. But the first 3 Halo books, written by Eric Nyland and William Dietz, were purely supplemental to the Halo games. Like, you can just play Halo 1, 2, 3, ODST, Reach if you want, even though that contradicts the books, and have a complete story. You know all the information, you see all the character work that you need to enjoy it. But if you go read the books, you get a deep dive into the lore, you get more backstory for all the characters, you get more of their internal thought processes, you get a lot more nuance because you have a lot more room and time for that. Funnily enough, Gears of War and Mass Effect, I would give the same praise. The Gears of War books really explore the characters in a way that makes them a lot more interesting when you go back and play the games. But you can definitely play the games as just big dudes with big ass muscles killing locusts, chainsaw guns, explosions, and just a fun time. And I think the books enhance your experience, but they're not necessary to enjoy the games. And unfortunately for the MCU and seemingly the DCU, they didn't go the route of saying, hey, we're going to have some fun with these shows. Maybe it'll give you a little bit of extra something when you see the movies, but the movies are really the through line. So now that you've tried to make these TV shows and other mediums required reading, you've lost a massive part of your audience who's just not going to chase you across platforms. And the next time they go see a movie that's confusing and they have no idea what's going on, they're also going to stop seeing the movies. So you're essentially kneecapping yourself from both ends by demanding your audience follow you cross-platform and then also making them give up when they don't on the product that they originally cared about to begin with. And obviously all of this is on top of the fact that it's all piss poor quality, or a majority of it is. I can't wait to see how Mando and Grogu does, because second season Mandalorian at one point peaked at like 30 million plus viewers, and obviously the sequel trilogy all made over $1 billion, even though that was a massive downward trend after The Force Awakens. The Solo movie was a huge bomb. So I'm really curious to see how Mando does, where it was created on streaming, but then being thrust into a movie theater. I highly suspect the box office will be underwhelming to say the least. Of course, there's always exceptions like K-pop Demon Hunters, which is just a phenomenon, and it actually stole a weekend at the box office because of how huge it was. So nothing is 100% a rule, but in general, I think it's really bad for these cinematic universes to try to keep going cross-medium or cross-platform like they are currently. But I'm going to leave it there for this one. I mainly just wanted to talk about why I think this is a bad philosophy in general, give a couple of examples of a way to exploit going cross-platform or cross-medium, and I guess we'll see what happens. If you've been following these cinematic universes or been the beneficiary of cross-medium storytelling, let me know what you think in the comments. I try to respond to all comments that aren't just insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.